Greetings everybody! Today I'm here to talk about my September books and my reviews and my wrap-up. This month was honestly a bit hit or miss. There were some books I loved, some books I really hated, so we'll go ahead and get into it. I give every book I read a rating out of 5 stars, so I will tell you what my rating is and then explain how I got there. The first book I read this month was my favorite of the month, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. And this book I gave a 5 out of 5 because it was fantastic. I didn't want it to end. And what you do in this book is you follow a character named Oliver, and he is a man that is just being released a little bit early out of prison. So he's been in prison for the last 10 years. And at the beginning, so this is not a spoiler, but they leave it very ambiguous that you don't know if he is actually the person who committed this crime or not. But because he's being released on good behavior from prison, they probably are unsure whether he is actually completely at fault. The book is split into 5 acts, and in each act you get a prologue chapter that takes place in the present because Oliver is meeting up with a detective who worked on his case who wants to know, after all this time, what really happened, because the detective doesn't believe that he ever got the true story. And then throughout the acts, you get details and you hear the story of what happened. So Oliver was a student in his final year at a conservatory, which if you don't know is kind of like a college but for art students. And he was in an elite group of students who were studying Shakespeare and acting. So if you're a Shakespeare lover, you will really appreciate this book because the characters are constantly quoting Shakespeare and referencing it. I am not a Shakespeare person, but I didn't find that it was a detriment to me enjoying this book. If they were ever quoting it or whatever, I just knew, okay, they're referencing something, but it didn't cause me to not understand what was happening. This book is really good at creating that cool, gothic, creepy kind of atmosphere of an academic setting. And I really love the description of this book where it said that the characters find that they are stuck in a niche for when they're acting, and they always act out the same type of characters, and it almost feels like they become that trope. Because I have seen criticisms of this book that people say, well, the characters are just stereotypes. But the book addresses that in itself. The whole point is they have felt like stereotypes because that's who they're always acting out in their plays. And then as the book progresses, each of them in their own way is kind of branching out from that place where they've always felt comfortable, always being the same. If you have ever read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, I would recommend this to you. This is kind of like the PG-13 version. So The Secret History has a very, very similar premise where you've got a group of niche students who are really close working together and one of them ends up being killed. The reason why I say this is the PG-13 version is this one is not as dry as The Secret History, and it also doesn't delve into the psyche of the characters as much. Don't get me wrong, I love The Secret History too, but I think if that one was out of your reach and not really your cup of tea, this one probably will be. And I really would recommend to anybody to read this book because I super enjoyed it. It was the best thing probably that I've read in the past couple months. Unfortunately, the next book I read was not a 5-star, it was actually a 1-star, and that is Blood Canticle by Anne Rice. This is number 10 in the Vampire Chronicles series, and I'm chugging along at this series just because I want to finish it. I have 3 books left, and last month I reviewed Blackwood Farm from the same series. I was hoping that this one would be better because Anne Rice's books are honestly very hit or miss. Sometimes I love them, sometimes I can't believe they're written by the same person. So I was hopeful, but unfortunately this book actually has the same characters, same setting as the previous. Usually the Vampire Chronicles are not such direct sequels to one another like that. Unfortunately, this one is, so I already knew from the beginning, seeing all these characters again, that I wasn't going to have a good time. And I got tricked a little bit because if you know anything about this series, one of the main vampires is the vampire Lestat. And this book has Lestat as the narrator, which I was happy about because he's one of the more fun-loving vampires. The others are super serious. But in this book, I don't know, his personality was not the same as the other books. He seemed kind of crazed and out of control, so it didn't actually end up being a positive for me. I'm going to keep it brief and just end it there because I went on a whole tirade last month about Blackwood Farm, but suffice to say, it's 1 star, I don't recommend. My next book was a book I read for a book club, and that is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. Probably not something I would have picked of my own volition, but it was okay. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. The writing's simple, and it's a family drama, which is not really my genre, but I find these books, while they may not be my favorite thing in the world, I can get through them. Nothing about them offends me and makes me feel like I hate it and I want to quit. So I did finish the whole thing. This book is kind of exactly like reading a Hallmark movie. You're following a 15-year-old girl named Lainey, and her dad is a Vietnam veteran. So this takes place in the late 70s, early 80s. So her dad was a POW, and now that he's been returned back to the US, he has a lot of issues with PTSD that are not really diagnosed. So a lot of things get taken out on Lainey and her mom because her dad has a lot of issues from when he was in the war. At the beginning of the story, her dad gets a letter from an old war friend who had passed away that says that he has inherited the friend's cabin that is in Alaska. And for whatever reason, the friend died years in the past and the letter is only now getting to him. Since Lainey's dad has a lot of issues keeping jobs, they decide they're going to pack up, leave the mainland United States, and move to Alaska because it's a fresh start for the family. Once they're in Alaska, they have a lot of challenges with their living environment because they're living in a really remote, small town, and they don't have things like running water and electricity, and they have to basically relearn how to do everything to survive. And the book mainly focuses on the drama between the relationship of Lainey's family, so her dad versus her mom and herself. It's an okay book. It's one of those that has a lot of dramatic things happen and has a very nice, cozy ending at the end. So if that's your cup of tea, you'll probably enjoy this, but I don't know, it's a skippable one for me. The next thing I read is not quite a book, it's more like a short story or a novella, and that is Lady Susan by Jane Austen. I read Pride and Prejudice earlier this year and was honestly surprised by how much I liked it, and so I'm interested to read more by Jane Austen. And I was at the library last week and I saw this, so I picked it up. Lady Susan is kind of like a socialite, and she is a recent widower. And when you read this novella, you're reading the letters that she sends back and forth between her family and friends, and seeing the ways that she is very flirtatious, she's very manipulative, and is basically trying to conspire to get herself and her daughter advantageous marriages. And unfortunately for her daughter, she doesn't really care about her daughter and basically just wants to marry her off so that she doesn't have to think about her anymore. And you do get a satisfying ending as the book progresses. You see the ways that the people around her start to put 2 and 2 together and realize that all these money moves that Lady Susan is trying to make are all just for herself, and she doesn't really care about others very much. It's a really satisfying, cute little book, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the last thing I read this month, which I'm not going to go into too much detail because I did make a whole rant review, it's my previous video, and that is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I gave this a 1 out of 5 because, well, for a lot of reasons, but to keep it simple and short, I didn't like our main character, April May. She's a 23-year-old YouTube star, and she made first contact with aliens. I don't like the YA tone of this book, and I don't like it that it didn't deliver anything that it promised. There was a lot of social commentary in this book, not deep social commentary, but in any case, had I known that, I probably would not have read this. But it gets recommended a lot here on YouTube, and I feel like I'm kind of an outlier in that I did not like this. So if you're someone who's on the fence, here's an opposing view. I don't recommend this book at all, and I haven't read the sequel, and I don't plan to. Those were all my books for September. Let me know if you've read any of them and what your thoughts are if you have. And definitely check out If We Were Villains. I really think it's a fantastic book, and not a lot of people know about it, I don't think. So I really recommend you check it out, no matter what kinds of things you're into. I think it's just a fantastic book. Next month for October, or I guess this month now, I will be reading a lot of horror and thriller books, which I haven't done in a while, and the last couple I did read were not the best for me. I feel like I always sound super negative, like I don't even like reading, but I don't know, I've just been picking the wrong things lately. So I'm excited to check those out for the month of October, and I will be giving another end of the month wrap up when I'm done with those. Other than that, please subscribe if you'd like to see more reviews from me, and thank you for watching. Bye!